You know, there are many default features designed to help make our lives easier when using our various devices. We have default features on our computers, on our phones, but there are risks. We've all sent text messages where a word has automatically been changed to something very different. However, the real risk falls into the many other defaults that have quietly crept into how we communicate with others. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk, and I'll go over a few critical defaults you might just recognize.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
I want to start with a simple Webster's definition of the word default. It's defined this way: a selection made usually automatically or without active consideration. Now, I think we all have a love hate relationship with the default settings within our computers. In theory, these settings are designed to make our lives easier and to help us do our jobs faster. But unfortunately, these supposed time savers can also invite trouble. I once meant to, I once meant to text a client, quote, "I'm a bit behind," and my buddy, the default feature, texted this: "I'm a big behind." I didn't catch it, but my client sure did. I still hear about it. Now, I'm not saying I don't appreciate some areas where I can use the assistance of the default feature, but I'm beginning to waver a bit now. The more aspects of what we do that are supposedly aided by default mechanisms, the more nervous I become, particularly because I don't think certain default features are limited to computer technology. I think we tend to fall into a default trap on how we communicate with others. Let me provide you with a half a dozen approaches that are affected negatively, but what I call default thinking. All right. So, number one, not listening to those we speak with. No one consciously enters into a conversation with another person with the intention of not listening. However, typically by default, we spend way too much time focusing on what we want to say next and not really paying attention to what the other person in front of us is actually saying. All right, let's go with it. Let me give you a second one: not asking open probes or open questions. Now, most of us have learned somewhere along the way that asking questions is critical. And the more we allow others to speak, the more they trust the person they're speaking with. Yet, we find that the few questions we do ask, typically by default, are often closed questions. And those closed questions can create an environment that feels more like an interrogation than a conversation. All right, here's a third one: not taking the time to study a problem. One of the greatest gifts a person can give you is through the disclosure of a problem he or she is grappling with. However, typically by default, we show little to no interest in displaying empathy. Instead of showing our interest by asking more questions about the problem, we rush in to offer solutions to a problem we don't really understand and our customer or friend doesn't think needs to be fixed. Here's another one: not providing true benefits. There comes a time in every conversation, particularly in a sales conversation, to display your product knowledge and provide solutions. However, typically by default, we provide reasons why others like a certain solution or why we like a certain solution. What we should be doing is using the other person's words and tying our recommendation to the specific needs of that person. I'm going to give you another one: not closing too fast. You see, asking someone for a commitment is on everyone's mind, and earning the right to do just that makes closing or asking for that commitment a whole lot easier. However, typically by default, we look for any reason or signal imaginable to jump past all we've learned about persuasion, or selling, we awkwardly ask for a commitment we haven't earned. And by doing so, we dramatically decrease our chances of success. Okay, last one. Not focusing on how we say what we say. We all want to create a sense of trust with those that we talk with or work with. And that means we have to come across as authentically as we possibly can. However, typically by default, we dedicate all our time and training to what we say and not how we say it. It should be noted, I could easily list 20 more mistakes impacted by default thinking, but this is called a pocket sized pep talk. We don't wake up with a plan or goal to fail. We want to do our best. But when we let our guard down, we allow our actions to, quote, become automatic or without active consideration, end quote. In other words, we run the risk of making mistakes due to default thinking. We need to be aware of this tendency and stay focused and vigilant of the risk of this type of thinking, or we run the risk of making mistakes with a far greater impact than telling someone that they have a big behind.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.